welcome to Call to Reset. I'm Dahni, and this is my Kubra. Happy original presidential inauguration day, March the 4th. Yes, that's true. Anyway, hats off in the house. I'm wearing my favorite three colors, which are red, white, of course, and blue. And if you put those three together, you have my fourth color, which is a light purple or lilac. So today, how did we get from where we used to be to where we are now? And by that I mean, what happened to we the people? What happened to us? Well, today there's a lot of people that are confused, a lot of people that are angry, a lot of people are scared, they're frightened, they're worried. They don't know quite what to do. We've had a lot of things that happened, a lot of things that are happening now. Some people are looking for answers. I would hope that a lot of people are looking for answers. But like playing the childhood game of hide and seek, you have to know where they are, or you have to look until you find them. What I'm presenting to you today is basically from a book that I wrote and published in 2012. I was an investigative reporter, and I started off years back asking myself two questions. What happened to the United States that I was taught about when I was going to school? Did I change? Did I just grow up, or did the United States actually change? So the next question was, well, if it changed, when exactly did that happen? So that's what I started my research journey on. And it ended up with me writing a book, and I'm going to show you my book, the cover of it, and it's called Reset, An Unalien's Guide to Resetting Our Republic. And by the way, it's now available in reverse printing. This is one of my aids that I'm using here. So I actually had to turn the picture around on the cover because you don't see it otherwise. Well, we used to look something like this. This is actually the artwork that's going to be part of the cover of my new book, which is a sequel to the first one. And it's called Apple of Gold in a Picture of Silver. So on the front, I'll hold it up again, this is the apple of gold. And right over the top of it, you have underneath the Declaration of Independence, wherein it said that all are created equal and that we have certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So we formed a constitution, which is the picture of silver behind us, to protect those rights, the rights of you and I. Now, today, it kind of looks like this. Well, what happened to it? All these books are copies of the U.S. Code, 54 different titles, all the laws and the statutes that Congress passed. And look at this little tiny thing over there in the corner. That's you and I. So you can't really see it with this picture, but the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence is virtually non-existent in that picture anymore because something else has taken over. So a lot of people want to look all the way back to 1609. 1609 with King James, the same King James that made the authorized version of the King James Bible. Well, he had a little treaty, and it was in Jamestown, and it was the Virginia Company. And he signed things there, and no matter what happened after that, his heirs would also be entitled to all this property and everything else. So some people want to look all the way back to there, and other people want to look even more forward to the last current election. There's people out there that believe there's a military coup taking place. Optics, all you got to do is look around the Capitol and you see that there's barbed wire, fences, and so that looks like a military operation to me. I don't know about you. The question is that to keep people in or is it to keep people out? So there's different theories about that. Some people go back to 1933 with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And in 1933, actually I believe it was 1937, I believe, the inauguration used to be on March 4th. For almost every single president, except for the first one, which was George Washington, his was delayed until April 30th because it was a very hard winter and they had problems counting the electoral votes. So that's why he didn't go for March the 4th. So pretty much everybody else did, and then eventually it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt that got it changed during his administration to what we now see as January the 20th. So if we're going to reset something, we might as well reset the original inauguration date for a new president to March 4th. So I'm going to cut through all this stuff, all these theories and all these worries and concerns, because like playing hide and seek, you have to know where to look in order to find them. So I'm no one important or special. I just happened to do the research and I found it all in public places, all like on the front of your face, right on the nose of your face, right out there in public and everything like that. So rather than look back to 1609 or look forward to 2020 or 2016 or 1933 and all this stuff that people do, let's go to the cause, and if we can eliminate the cause, the symptoms will disappear. And that cause goes all the way back to 1860. In 1860, you had nominated, and the election in November elected Abraham Lincoln as the 16th president of the United States. And there was a lot of stuff going on. There was states that were threatening to secede if he ever won the nomination. There were states that had succeeded. And the date that he was inaugurated happened to be on March the 4th. And on March the 4th, all the senators and all the representatives of the southern states, 7 of them, all walked out in mass. And then thereafter, you had several different states that all seceded from the Union. So what did Abraham Lincoln do? The Congress had already adjourned and they had went home. And he waited, I guess, till they all got home. And then he goes to the Constitution of the United States for America, and he invokes a clause for the first time in the history of our republic. And that is, under extraordinary occasions, that's the way it reads, the president has another power, and that is to convene both houses of Congress. And this is nothing that hasn't happened, more currently. Franklin Delano Roosevelt convened both houses of Congress. But that particular day that he called for would be July 4th of the following, in that summer. But the Congress had signed out what is called sine die. It's a Latin term which means without a day. So essentially, Congress ceased to exist as a congressional body, part of the 3 branches of government, until they convened again. Well, at this time, the President of the United States convenes both houses of Congress. So in essence, it is an extraordinary occasion Congress. It's no longer a regular Congress. Well, they all complied. Another thing that Lincoln did, he invoked the 1807 Insurrection Act. And the law states that you must give advanced warning, and it must be in public. So he gave the southern states 25 days to peaceably return home. Well, we know that that didn't happen because this conflict went on for 4 years. So the next thing that he did was he had a proclamation. It was called the Conscription Act. Both the North and the South realized that this was not going to be over in a short amount of time. The first battle, I think it was called Bull Run, happened in Manassas, Virginia. and you had people on one side and people on the other side, and all the soldiers went right down the middle. The people on one side and the other side, they were waving at each other. Likely they were friends and family. You know, they brought their families together and they were having a picnic lunch, and they thought this thing would be over in a short period of time. Well, it wasn't. And so volunteers were no longer going to take care of the situation. So both the North and the South had to have a draft. And this was what Lincoln did, and it was called the Conscription Act. And this happened in 1863. And in that act, it states that, you know, you have to go to the districts. So each state was set up under districts. And it sounds like it would have been like the congressional districts. So every state had different districts. And in those districts, there had to be a military provost, there had to be a medical doctor, and there had to be one other individual. So everybody had to go and sign up for the draft. The doctor would have to see whether they were fit for service. But the whole point was to enforce this. This was all done by the military. So the districts and the states were taken over by the President of the United States. He also, throughout the entire, what we know as the Civil War, pretty much had suspended habeas corpus. And that means we have the body. There was no civil trial. There was no civil government. So the entire government was taken over by the President of the United States. And he did so legally. He did so according to the Constitution. He did everything according to the Constitution. So this Conscription Act, which showed that there had to be these individuals there, people had to sign up, they had to go there. There was certain things that they could get out of going to military. If they had $300, they sent somebody else in their stead. Well, $300 then was a lot of money. And it would be a lot of money today if equal to what they had to pay in those days. Some say $3,000 to $30,000. So not too many people could afford that. As a matter of fact, people that could, they were called the money men. And as a result of this, as well as the black slaves leaving the South, coming up into the North, the cities became crowded, especially like New York City, all the major cities. And there was people coming over from Ireland, and they were trying to get away from the gangs over there, and they come back to New York City, which was like the U.S. capital for finances in its day. And it was crowded, and you had stories about Typhoid Mary. You know, she went from place to place and everybody was getting sick, and it was just a horrible situation. Young girls, they either had to become thieves in order to survive. They had social clubs that were basically the volunteer fire departments all fighting each other, and some guy would show up and he'd put a big crate over top of the fire plug and wait for his gang to get there, and he'd fight off anybody else that dared to try to use that fire hydrant. And sometimes they'd get there and they'd fight each other, the building would burn down. Well, that's okay. They'd go to the next one and start a fire over there. It was just a crazy time. And this was happening as a result of this Conscription Act. Well, also in 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed what is known as the Lieber Code. The Lieber Code was written by a man by the name of Francis Lieber, and he had a son that was fighting for the North, and he also had a son that was fighting for the South. Well, in the Lieber Code, this was basically the rules of engagement of one country in invading another country, and also the rules for occupation once they were conquered. So you scratch your head, it's like, well, what country was the United States of America invading? They invaded the United States of America. So basically the entire country was under martial law. No civil law. It was all under the command of the President of the United States. And in the Lieber Code, which by the way happens to be on record of the International Court of Law over in Belgium or something like that, I'm not sure. But it's still there, and the original. And in the Libra Code, there was only 2 ways to cancel it. The President of the United States could cancel it, or if there was a peace treaty drawn up between the 2 different countries. Well, the South was never recognized as a country, and there was no peace treaty ever done. It was just a surrender by Lee and other people later on in that year of 1865, and that was finally the end of it. Well, one thing happened in all this, and that was that the President of the United States was assassinated in 1865. So what I'm here to tell you, and we're basically at about 15 minutes now, but this is the whole conclusion of the whole thing. That Conscription Act and everything that the President did between 1860 and 1863 has never been canceled. We are still under martial law to this day. You and I were born under martial law. We basically do not have our rights. We have, if we're lucky, we got privileges. So that, in a nutshell, is exactly what happened, and that's why we are where we are today. So in the next session, we'll try to discover what exactly would have Lincoln done had he not been assassinated. So thank you. Hope you enjoyed this, and we're going to try to set up some question and answers live on Facebook and maybe a radio. So we'll see what happens. So have a great day. There's hope a-coming.